Hi and welcome to Tabletop Gaming. My name is Charlie and today we are taking a look at Taelmoor. This is a new game headed to Kickstarter from Delv Bros and it takes around 60 to 90 minutes for 1 to 6 players to play. That's right, there's a solo option. So, what is it, Charlie? Come on, tell us more. So, it is a app-driven story game. So essentially, if you think of everything that you like in an RPG, about being taken through and given a narrative structure and being told what's happening, having to make decisions based on your character, this does that for you. Quite nicely, you don't need a GM for this one because your GM is going to be your app. Now, I have a web app version of it because this is in prototype phase, which takes me through the story. So you'll see from the very beginning we have a QR code on the front here. Scanning that takes us through to the web app, which takes us through to our sort of story setting. What is it that we're going to be doing and how we proceed with the game. If you think of this as a merger between something like Dungeons and Dragons for the RPG aspect, maybe Chronicles of Crime for the QR and investigation side of things, and then finally Mansions of Madness, because the way in which you're going to build that story is also on the tabletop. So you'll have cards that tiles that you'll lay down and you'll move through and you'll scan to work out what's going on. You have a real potential for a really interesting, deep story that you're right in the heart of. Now, today I wanted to give you a quick preview, first look at sort of what's inside it. It is of course a pre-Kickstarter copy, so it does mean that there are things that may change. For example, the one that always comes up, we've got no box insert, that's perfectly normal. You'll more than likely get one by the time you get there. And also the app that we're using at the moment is the web app, while that's still in development to be available for your phones, but I would expect that it's ready by the time you pick it up at retail. For now, the web app does the job quite nicely. And whilst I'm going to give you sort of a brief overview, show you maybe the setup and what happens and what you can expect, the other thing to bear in mind is that there is a print and play version available that gives you a really good, solid idea of what this game is like and will enable you to find out whether it's one for you or not. So without further ado, let's take a little bit more of a look. So first up, we'll scan the box, which will tell us where we need to go. So let's head to the web app. Once we're in there, we have Taelmoor, the scan and play dungeon crawler. Now, I'm not going to take you through the whole thing, but I think this is a really good way to just give you a glimpse over everything that's contained and what it is that you're going to do. So we'll breeze through these bits. Now, this tells us just a little bit about Taelmoor itself. Print the pieces, gather your party, select a scenario. Let's have a quick look at the initiation test, just to give us the idea that I mentioned about what it is that we're going to be doing. So, welcome to Taelmoor. You're playing Taelmoor. Now, the first thing you're going to need to do when you have a look at these is find a character. So, if you're playing one player, you're going to play as 2 classes. So you need to pick which 2 you're going to play as. If you're playing as a group, there is a code here which all of you can then scan into to be able to play into the same game. Now that means that you might get some different information depending on your class, and you can take your own actions. It also means when you're given information that you can share, you're all reading from the same story. So you're all building the narrative together. But class-wise, what we're going to look at are pretty standard for sort of RPG classes. So we've got the rogue, we've got the elf, the wizard, the dwarf. So let's scan a class. Let's go with the rogue, because for me, if you've seen any of my videos before, standard rogue. Always go for the rogue. Okay, so we're going to play as the rogue. And then we're going to be asked to add another character. So this time, maybe let's do the barbarian, because why not? So once again, we'll just scan for another character. We have our barbarian. Fabulous. Now, each of those cards contains a little bit more detail than just the QR codes, although you will see QR codes everywhere. On the back of them, there's more information about the character themselves. There's also things like their HP, their damage, their speed, and then any level ups that you might be entitled to as you go through the game, because you're going to level up. Nice and exciting. However, as soon as you click Begin Game, which we'll do now, you will be told the backstories in more detail. Now, as you have a look through here, you can see that each of them has sort of a little bit of extra information buried in a hyperlink. So in Taelmoor, let's have a look at what Taelmoor has to tell us. And it gives us more information, so you can be as in-depth as you want. If you want the full story with the whole backlore, with the whole rich sort of story that goes behind it, you can click every button. If you would rather just sort of zip through the action, you only need to read the main stuff, which helps in sort of keeping the pace going suitable to your group, as well as how long you intend to be playing it for as well. So, I won't go through this in any particular detail. If you want to play this, again, there's the print and play, or you can pick it up on Kickstarter. But essentially, it tells us just a little bit more about wanting to join the Shattered Band, which is a sort of group of mercenaries that take on any job and you want to join, and they've invited you for an initiation test. If we then head to close that. We're given the Barbarians Backstory, but you'll notice at the top, as with the other one, this is a private message that only you can see. So if you're playing in a group, each of you will get your characters' stories. And once again, for different reasons, you're going to be joining the Shattered Band. So, a little bit more information about starting the scenario. This is how you're going to learn how to play. It almost feels video gamey because it talks you through step by step, but it actually makes it really efficient in getting you up and running very, very quickly. So in this case, if you see in the centre here, for the initiation test, your first room is A5. So that is when we then come into these location tiles. Now these terrain tiles there's lots of them, and then they're also double-sided. Each of them contains a barcode, so that's how you're going to identify that the room is there and available, and once you do, you can then start putting things into it. So items that are found there, or people, perhaps, maybe, we'll come on to that in a moment. With that, every time you then move, you're then going to build further round or out or in whichever direction is necessary. So it's worth bearing in mind you're going to need a fair bit of table space, and I will come on to organising your stuff in just a moment. So, A5 is laid down. It's just going to give us a little bit more information about what we're going to need to do, and that there's the inspect action option to be able to take a look at the bottom of it. But we've also got a little bit more information. So when you're scanning QR code for a target, when you're trying to think of what to do, imagine, would you use an action on a target? So would I use a lockpick on a door? That'll come up later. Would I use X, Y, Z? So within those backstories, as I should have mentioned, I do apologise, is that you pick up some items innate to your character. So the rogue, for example, will have lockpicks and a divining key, and then others will have certain ones, some have none, but those give you sort of a unique twist on your character, so there's a specific reason for playing the class that you're playing. Now you have these choices along the bottom as to what you're going to do with each room or each item so that you know what's going on. So if we were to inspect the room, as it keeps telling us that we should, if I hit inspect the gloomy entrance. Marvellous. Okay, so you stand in the entryway with Aldermink waiting a few feet ahead of you. Aldermink is your recruiter. You can always go back and pause those pages to read a little bit more information, but it does tell you about that. So we will find Aldermink to begin with, who I believe is this guy. I'll pop a little close up so you can see what he looks like. And we'll pop him in there. He's going to tell us all about the trial itself, and also that there is a barrel in the room, which is J8, and an old door to the north. Now those are the other two things that you probably need to be most aware of, are the sort of changes you can make. So if I find D1, for instance, which is here, I'll pop that on the top to have an idea of what the doorway will look like, because you'll see they're all intersected, so they all fit together quite nicely. And then we'll pop that barrel in there as well as we're told to, so that we can investigate that later. Again, there's a QR code on the back, so we're looking to perhaps inspect or interact with that barrel to find out what's going on with it and what we need to do next. Now, Aldermink tells us about what we're going to need to do, and then it's up to us. We're away, we can make those choices. So with those tiles that we've got our sort of NPC, we've got our location tiles, we've got our item tiles, we've got our doorway. That immediately gives you an overview of the sort of things that are here. Now it does get more in detail. For example, we have a dragon tile who looks pretty feisty, and we've got a, where are the rats? I can't see the rats. There's a really cute little rat token, there it is. That is absolutely adorable. So those are sort of later things, they'll come into action. So you may burst into a room and it will tell you, in here is E6, which happens to be the massive red dragon, and it's up to you to then fight them. Perhaps the last thing then to go through is that fight itself, because we've seen everything else. And what will happen is it will come up on your screen with your enemies, and it will be up to you to then select what you're going to do. Again, by QR codes. So each character that you select is going to have different abilities. So the ones with magic, for example, are going to use magic. The barbarians are probably going to punch you. Those sorts of things. With those, you have additional cards that sit with you specifically. So you have, for example, Wild Swing, which is a basic barbarian ability, and what that's going to do is that's going to deal 9 damage to a random enemy, 3 to yourself, and then as you proceed, you then have more advanced ones. So your advanced barbarian ability might be Brutalize, for example, which is a higher card that you'll pick up as you then level up. Each of those, then you'll see the remnants of a RPG, because you're creating your character, you're sticking with your character, you're building them up and taking them through things, and you're making your decision as to what you're going to use as you then go through. You're also exploring in such a way that you don't necessarily need the GM, or the GM is inbuilt into a phone that takes you through. You're not going to know what's happening next. You're going to be fighting NPCs at every corner, you're going to be fighting enemies at every corner. You shouldn't fight the NPCs, be nice to the NPCs, or standard ones like your Aldermink. And basically just trying to solve the quest that you're given as you go along. Maybe let's look more specifically. So, we have our barrel. I would quite like to inspect the barrel, so I'm going to hit inspect. And I'm going to flip that over and take a look. We're inspecting the barrel. Cool. Then it's going to give me some story. So the barrel appears to be as old as the building itself, more than dusty and partially rotted. Still, it seems like it was well made once upon a time, so the structure remains sound. Great, that doesn't tell me too much. Let's maybe interact with it. Let's try that instead. Let's interact with the barrel, confirm. There's something to this barrel. Why would it be here otherwise? You kick it as hard as you can, but it maintains its shape. There's a little bit more to it, but basically, there's something interesting about it, and we don't yet know what it is. Let's see about maybe interacting, and we'll ask Alder Mink about it. This is the first part of your trial. Feel free to ask me any questions about anything you see, and I may or may not provide advice. Helpful. Ask about the barrel. Indeed, it is a barrel. On the outside, it appears to be useless. Great. Great help. One of these things is sort of asking the right question. So later in, there is something that you can get from the barrel, but you need to do so with the tools that you gain throughout. So I may not be able to solve this right now, but as I carry on through, I may be able to solve it later. And that's what makes it interesting. Hopefully, though, that gives you an idea about the sort of things that you can do. So if we carry on, I can ask about any of the things. Let's ask about the door, for example. It is a door, as I'm sure you're well aware. I would recommend trying to get through it somehow. Someone on your team should have the skills, which is interesting because, of course, we've got the rogue, so we do have those skills. It's that combination that you're going to be trying to seek throughout that takes you into the next level. So once I've worked out that I need to use the lockpick to get through the lock, using the rogue and not the barbarian, then we're on to a different room. Then we're given a new tile to lay down and explore further. Now, whilst that setup is literally just 2 tiles and a person and an item, that is a really clear and quick way to show you what those do, and there's no real difficulty in what you're doing. You're tapping a button to say what it is that you want to do, you're scanning the item. You're tapping a button, you're scanning an item. And that little tutorial is just going to have you doing that in a way that's interesting. So, okay, so I'm tapping to use my lockpick on the door. Does it work? Oh, but I'm actually playing as the barbarian at the moment, and the barbarian's rubbish at such things, so I should wait until the rogue is doing so that we can maximise those skills. You're going to have to think quite a lot in this game. It's not going to go easy on you, but it's really rewarding to know that you figured out that doing that with that has worked with this. I feel like I could take you through the whole first scenario and just have a great time, but obviously you need to be able to do that for yourself, so I'm not going to ruin it. Do head and check out that print and play, do head and check out the Kickstarter so that you know what's going on. But what I can say is this is a lovely merge of the elements of RPGs that I love, but the ability to play with a group and have differing information using the art of technology. But also being able to play on my own was quite a bonus to this, I think. I can play RPG-like games with some sort of physicality to them that keeps me involved, making my own decisions and being able to pull myself through a story, which is always, in my eyes, a great bonus. Overall, as I say, this is not a review, but one thing I would say is that perhaps if you want to challenge yourself, you could add in some timers, only allow a certain amount of time to complete it, and also I would just recommend that when you're taking out all of the tokens, to make sure they are as ordered as they possibly can be. There is a little bit of downtime in trying to go through to find those. That might be resolved in the box insert, it might make it a lot easier, but just at the moment I would say just make sure you keep them in order. Lovely and easy. And whilst this is, of course, as I said before, a pre-Kickstarter copy, this is not a review, this is just sort of a quick playthrough to get an idea of how it works and to give you a first look at it. It's got a lot of potential, I'm quite excited about this one. It's heading to Kickstarter, so be sure to check it out. I will pop all of the links that you need in the description below. If you've enjoyed this video, please let us know by liking and commenting. Let me know if this is your style of game, if this is something you're interested in, basically because it lets me talk about games in the comments, and I love that, and I'll endeavour to answer any questions that you have about it too. Make sure you like and subscribe. The like is for me, the subscription is so that you can see more stuff like this when it comes out, and if you would like to see more from us, you can head to tabletopgaming.co.uk, where we have all sorts of reviews, features, you can buy a copy of the magazine, etc. Thank you for joining me while we go through this sort of dungeon crawling, QR scanning, adventure questy style game. See how much it pulls in, and let me know if there's anything that you want to hear more of. Thank you so much for joining me, and have a great day.